everyone. Welcome to episode number 46 of Perfect Inspiration. My name is Brian Matiash, and I'm joined by the lovely Whitney Stevens of Bliss Studio.
Hi, very excited to be here.
Thanks. So Whitney is, she's a personal friend. She's the wife of our senior product manager, Dan Hollerker, here at On One, and she's the primary photographer and owner of Bliss Studio here in Portland, Oregon. Now, Whitney is no stranger to On One. You probably have watched a webinar. She's done several of them with us. And this episode actually kind of you talked about something in one of the webinars that was really fantastic, and that was your kind of thing called an inspiration board, right?
Yes, inspiration boards were a popular topic that I think a lot of people enjoyed, so we wanted to take a little bit more time and expand on that and let you guys kind of see what they're all about.
Yeah, and so what you're seeing here, everyone, is this is just one of the pages in Whitney's inspiration, or we call it the storybook, right?
Right. So something that I'm a little bit more known for in my studio is my storybook albums that I do for my clients. And it's basically a 1-year album of my babies. It starts at, well, this one actually has hospital or maternity, but it will start at the beginning. So whatever beginning I get with my client, if they come in at maternity, it will start at maternity. We'll do a newborn, a 6 months, and a year. Some people will throw in a few extra sessions, but either way, it is the year shoot. And then I create more of a storybook album. It's kind of the modern baby book that you wouldn't necessarily get at every studio that you go to. There's definitely a lot of my heart that goes into these. There's a lot of typography, which also creates a different design element to my albums. I include mom and dad letters. I include any text that they want to give me. Sometimes there's more story, sometimes there's more quotes and just little inspiration pieces that the client wants. But I work with my clients to get that information, and I create these very unique albums. The one that we're looking at right now is actually my album. This is for my little girl. It's a little bit different for my design style, so I wanted to kind of show this because it shows very different typography. I reached for a little bit different, or pushed myself a little further because it was mine, but this will give you a little bit of idea of what I do.
Yeah, and so you kind of touched on something. Let me go back to the grid here. That I really love about this is that, one, this gives us, for the Perfect Inspiration series, a really fresh look at design. As you look through, you can see here on the left here, this is the 46th episode that we've done, and pretty much every single episode has to do with editing an image, with a story around it. Here, this is actually creating a story with a lot of images and a lot of text and clip art and type. And so what I wanted to kind of bring up was this inspiration board. So you can see here, and I'll just point this out really quickly, and Whitney will talk about it in more depth, but as I scroll through here in the grid view, notice the cohesion of the book. Look at the themes involved. And so Whitney, let's talk about, your process, of creating a story.
It's definitely not an easy one, and I can say from any photographer, if you're doing a album from a single session, it's a lot easier to throw together. You already have a theme, you probably already have a look, it's the same location. When you're trying to do something like this, you've got however many handful of shoots, I think there's 5 in this one, that you're trying to make fit, and they're not gonna fit. I mean, you have hospital shots here, we have maternity, you have indoor, you have outdoor, so you have so many different looks, but you still want the album to tie together and look complete and look like a finished album that one photographer did or that one person designed. It's not just a scrapbook of stuff thrown all over everywhere. Like I said, these are very important to me, that they look like a finished book that you would hold in your hand and you can read it and go through it and understand. Anybody would be able to know basically the story of my daughter's first year because it's all here. One thing that I think is very scary, if you want to go into Photoshop, is seeing a blank page in front of you. So you have to start somewhere. You may have 24 blank pages in front of you if that's how large your album is. And I think for anybody, you look at that and go, what do I do? Where do I start?
But so for you, because your book was, the book that we're showing over here in Lightroom is a 10 by 10.
It's a 10 by 10. So what I would do is, the first thing that I like to do is I need to find inspiration somewhere. When I'm going to start an album, it's either within the images. So say it's a little boy and I know I want to use the theme of blue, or I want blue throughout it, or, some kind of theme. Maybe the baby's room had giraffes in it. I mean, I know that's random, but just something that made me want to be able to pull that into their album to make sense. You don't always have something directly from your images. Sometimes you have to find it somewhere else. I look through books, I look through magazine clippings. I have stuff pulled at home that I will save for when I have a future album, and I'll pull it out and look for something that is very inspiring to me. One of the big, huge things right now is Pinterest. If you're not a Pinterest user, you probably should be. It's definitely a fun thing that I use all the time. I have it on my phone. I scroll through it when I'm bored and have a little bit of free time, and I'm constantly looking for inspiration. We're here on my Pinterest board. It's Bliss Whitney is my username. If you want to follow my board, you're welcome to. If you need an invite, you can send us an invite, and we'll make sure that you are accepted into Pinterest.
Yeah.
These are all the boards that I've pinned, and what we're going to click on here is the color inspiration board, and you can see the link up across the top if you want to get directly to this board. But this is where I pin different fonts, different color styles, different design elements that I love, that I will take pieces of this and use it in an album. And granted, please know I don't use everything that you see here. I mean, I pull a piece out. There might be one color, theme that I really love, or one font that I really love. Or if Brian goes down here a little further, I think you'll see some of these graphic typography pieces. Like we both like this one.
I love this one.
The way it's laid out, something about that might inspire me to go, okay, I want it to look kind of vintage like this, and that is the theme that I'm going to go into my book.
Yeah, and so, the thing that's important to me is... Oh, I love that.
Well, it has a vintage little feel to it too.
You see, and it looks like a playing card in a way. I would see that, and I'd really be like, all right, Mike Udando, I want to hire you for whatever you're doing, because it just shows care. And I'm a big fan of kind of practicing what you preach. I teach a lot of kind of techniques and stuff here at On One, and just about everything I kind of teach, I practice. And, Whitney is no exception. Because right here, this is your inspiration board for this book, right?
Correct. So this is the inspiration board that I built. And if you saw when we were in Pinterest, this similar to the color board. So flip back to Pinterest. You see, click on one of these there's a color board. So that inspiration came from that image, clearly, and they went ahead and pulled out the colors for that image. So kind of the same idea. I'll pull out my inspiration board, the same size album I'm making. So this is a 10 by 10 page. That's the size of my album. And these are the colors that I want to go into my album. These are the two fonts that I use. These are the graphics. There's a texture that you can kind of see in the gray background. Right there. That texture is pulled in through the album. But each of these elements will get tied into my album. I don't always just sit down and build my whole inspiration board. Sometimes it's kind of built along the way.
Sure.
You find another graphic, or you find a different color that you want to add in, but I always stick it on this page. And I think for me, it's fun to have, obviously, to be able to build this album from, but I don't always sit down and do an entire album in one setting. So if I'm coming back to it a couple days later, I know where I'm at. I know what fonts that I'm using. I have the colors already there. You can use the color picker and pull the colors out. You're able to drag the fonts over. It's easier than having to go through your album and go, what was I doing again? And I have oftentimes many albums that I'm doing at the same time. And they are all different. So I want each of them to have their starting point.
So I know this is your book, obviously, but and I won't have a question, but then I have a few points I want to make. For a client, when you put the inspiration board together, do you go to them with the approval, or is it just kind of...
No, the inspiration board's more there for me, I think, than anything. My client gets approval of the final album, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I let them see it before I send it to print, because there's no redos at that point. But I build it for me so that I have a design start. I think as photographers, I know that typography and text is really difficult for people. I've had a lot of practice with it now and absolutely love it, but it can be a little bit scary when you're approaching it. So having this too, and being able to play with the fonts a little bit, I want to be able to have that on that page so I know what I'm pulling.
And you can see that really quickly. I want to jump back to your inspiration board here. Look at all the different fonts that Whitney has pinned already, and you can see that they're not the same. That's important, is that these are distinct, different fonts. And you're right. I mean, fonts, whenever I need to add a font to something and it's not Arial or, On One, we have our own font here at On One. When it's not those, I kind of stall. And I don't stall because I don't know what I want. I stall because a lot of times when you drop that massive font list down,
it's too many.
It's too many, and it's usually shown in the same font. You don't really get, and even when you do get a preview, it's such a small preview that's what I love about Pinterest is how it displays these things. It's easy and it's very visual. We're photographers, we're artists, and so we're very visual. And I love the way it breaks down colors. Now, the point I want to make about why I think this inspiration board is so fantastic, not why, but what makes it fantastic, rather. I want everyone to notice a few things. Notice the colors, the swatches up here. There are only 4 of them. There's not, you can have 5, you can have 6, but there are 4 primary colors. There are 2 primary fonts. There are a few pieces of clip art, a few different kind of shapes. There aren't 40 or 50 things, and this kind of brings me to that anecdote that I was telling Whitney about right before we started recording. In another life, way back when, when I started kind of getting very serious about photography before the architecture and the commercial stuff, I thought I wanted to be a wedding photographer. I went to workshops, I bought my speed lights, I learned about, ratios, and I bought my pocket wizards, and I did my first wedding, where I was the lead and I had an assistant. And afterwards, after the wedding, I had my shots and I rendered it down to the 20 or 30 that the bride and groom gets. And I was the same way as you. I never gave the digital images. I only made a book. And when I showed, before I showed it to the client, I showed it to a friend of mine. He's a photographer in Boston. He's a fantastic wedding photographer. His name is Douglas Levy. I'll never forget his response. And his response, mind you, was to the stylization of the images, not the images themselves. But he said that it looked like 10 different photographers edited these images. And that really kind of hit me. And you can take a lot from that with what Whitney's doing here. Because look at the grid here. Let's look it through it. It looks cohesive. It looks like it fits together. And the most important thing is it looks like Whitney's trying to tell a story. So talk about the elements here that make it look cohesive.
So he's totally right. I keep my stuff very simple. Every album that I do for my baby books are completely different. And when I say different, I mean I don't actually use templates for my baby albums. That is something that's a little bit more unique for me as well. I know it's faster to use templates. I sell templates. I mean, I realize that. But for my baby books, it's a different part of me that builds these. I like to keep them simple. If you get too gaudy and overdone and too scrapbooky and crazy with stuff everywhere, it takes away from who I am and who my studio is. And it doesn't look like that finished book. I mean, if you think about a wedding album, you want a wedding album to look very timeless. You want to be able to look through it and not realize that it was 20 years ago. You want it to still look good. If you get too scrapbooky and all over the place with your wedding albums, even, it will lose that. So I think that's a great point. I think the same thing with the baby book. It's gone once it takes away from being a book instead of just a scrapbook of images. I mean, I break the rules with seniors. I mean, I do funky stuff all over everywhere. It's a senior. I mean, that it's one session. It's kind of fun, but I want my baby books to still look good in 20 years. I want them to be timeless, and I want them to tell the story. As he's going through them, you'll see there's very much a story in this one. I mean, my husband and I both wrote a letter. I have all my clients do that to their child. Here's my letter to my daughter. I put in all of the little fun facts, little quotes that mean something to us. And I pull that stuff from my clients. I mean, sometimes I help them, but a lot of times it's as much as I can pull for them that fits their child and fits who they are that I tie into this. You'll see that the typography on each of my title pages, so this is one of my title pages, which actually, if you go back to the grid, let's look at that one more time. So one thing you'll see, it's going through the story from the very beginning to the end. Each section is kind of divided by a title page, and the title pages are all similar. So we were at the 1 year title page. You'll see I have a butterfly, it says 1+ year, and I'll have the little typography on the left-hand side. All of those words are different. They're all fitting to her 1 year or things that were happening at that point.
That's awesome.
And then if you go back to say, there you go, to the beginning, this is her 6 months. So it was fall time. I have 6 months plus fall. I was being a little kitschy on that as well. And then all of her words in there have something to do with her, with the 6 months, something that means something to my husband and I. Yeah,
and so, just take note. And it's something that's so, it's so subliminal. But when you're here as the creator here telling us, it makes a huge impact in terms of the style and the thought that not only you did for yourself, for your daughter's book, but also for your clients' books. I love, it's like chapters in a year.
Exactly, exactly. I'm cheating by showing not a client's here. I feel bad, but I just finished this album, so that's why we're doing this one
No,
today.
I think it's more personal, more
It
fitting,
is a little more
and
personal.
I love you and Dan. You guys are personal friends, and so to see it, I remember when Lily was born.
Hmm.
It's fantastic. It really is, and I just want to kind of wrap this up and show people that. Notice how many different images. So it's not about any one image. At the in the episode, you see the before and after of this particular image of Lily. But when you look at the grid, just how many different images there are. So you have to take care. If this is a project you're going to undertake, you take care. And you said it yourself. There were four photographers?
So we kind of cheated on this one, clearly, because I'm in some of the images. We can't take pictures of ourselves. So there's actually four photographers technically that contributed to this album. Some of them are my photos, some of them are my husband's, and then we had JB Salih and Joshua Carter also contributed a few of the mixed in images. Obviously the family photos, we had one of them as well shooting. So even though, and granted, I love both those guys' style. They all kind of fit with my style. It's not like I went off in left field here, but it still looks the same. I mean, it still looks like, I bet you probably can't tell that four photographers contributed to this album. I mean, the album looks like one person shot it.
Yeah, and one person shot it, but also that one person stylized and one person designed and laid out. So I really hope this episode kind of gives you a lot of ideas about inspiration. Once again, Pinterest. I'm on Pinterest. I don't use it necessarily for this kind of stuff because I don't really design albums. I use it more to catalog ideas actually for home improvement. I actually use Evernote. Evernote is another one here. I'll just kind of type it. And I'm going to be linking to Whitney's Pinterest page and specifically to her inspiration board in the text above. So don't worry about that. But Evernote's another one, which is great. I have my little Evernote clipper over here. So for me, a lot of times I go to, just to give people an idea, I'll go to waterfallsnorthwest.com, which is a phenomenal database of waterfalls, and I'll go to Oregon here, and I'll say I want to shoot Abiqua Falls. So all I do is click on the little Evernote clipper. I have to log in, but it will basically save it. I have an Evernote book called Waterfalls to Shoot, and it has all the directions, everything. So that's just kind of a different way. But Whitney, I really want to thank you so much. I love this. I loved it when you did a webinar. I know this episode is going to be awesome. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Hope you guys get something out of it. I hope that you find your inspiration somewhere, whether if it's building an inspiration board or Pinterest or somewhere else.
Yep. And let us know what you think about this episode. And I'll see you guys next week for episode number 47. Bye-bye.